I sat at the fancy dinner table while my wife's family called me a freeloader and laughed at me for not having a job. They made fun of me for living in such a beautiful house without paying rent. What they didn't know was that I actually owned the house they were sitting in. And tomorrow, everything was about to change. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe for more amazing stories. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Are you in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or maybe Miami? I love hearing from viewers all around the country. Now let's get back to Marcus and see what happens at this dinner. Marcus Thompson straightened his tie as he walked up the steps of the big white house in Phoenix, Arizona. The house had a nice front porch with flowers and looked very expensive. He had seen this house many times over the past 2 years, but tonight felt different. Tonight something bad was about to happen. The front door opened before Marcus could knock. His mother-in-law, Patricia, stood there wearing a fancy necklace. She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile you give someone you don't really like. "Marcus," she said, "how nice that you could come to dinner." The way she said nice made it sound like she didn't think it was nice at all. Marcus nodded and walked into the house. The floors were shiny and there were expensive rugs everywhere. On the walls were family pictures, but Marcus wasn't in any of them. "Everyone is in the dining room," Patricia said. "We've been waiting for you." The dining room got quiet when Marcus walked in. His father-in-law, David, sat at the head of the big wooden table. He had gray hair and looked at Marcus like he was studying him. Kevin, his wife's older brother, wore an expensive suit. Lisa, the younger sister, was looking at her phone and seemed bored. "There he is," David said, standing up with a fake smile. "Marcus, glad you could make it." Marcus felt everyone staring at him. It had been 8 months. 8 months since he left his job at the computer company. 8 months since his wife Jennifer kept telling him things would be okay. 8 months of her family treating him worse and worse. "Sorry I'm late," Marcus said, sitting down next to Jennifer. She squeezed his hand quickly but didn't look at him. The family started talking about Kevin's new apartment in downtown Phoenix. It had big windows and you could see the whole city from it. Marcus listened as they talked about the marble counters and the fancy technology that controlled everything with your voice. "The monthly fees alone cost more than most people's rent," Kevin said proudly. "But when you want quality, you can't be cheap. That's the difference between successful people and everyone else," Lisa added, looking right at Marcus. "Successful people know you have to spend money to make money." Patricia nodded. "It's all about having the right attitude," she said. "Some people are natural providers and others." She waved her hand, not finishing her sentence, but everyone knew what she meant. David raised his wine glass. "To Kevin, for showing us all how it's done." The family clinked their glasses together happily. Marcus raised his glass too, but his heart wasn't in it. Jennifer squeezed his hand under the table, but she didn't say anything to defend him. When did she stop standing up for him? "You know what I love most about Kevin?" David continued. "He never just coasts along. Even when things came easy, he worked hard to earn them." He was talking about Marcus without saying his name, which somehow felt worse. "Remember when Kevin was 25 and bought his first car?" Patricia asked. "A BMW, wasn't it? He paid for it all by himself." "The 300 series," Kevin confirmed. "Black. I worked extra hours for months to afford it. Now that's what I call being responsible," Lisa said. "There's something special about a man who can take care of himself." Marcus felt his shoulders getting tight. He was getting angry but trying to stay calm. He thought about the envelope in his jacket pocket. He thought about the phone call he made that afternoon to make sure everything was ready. "Marcus," Patricia said suddenly, her voice sweet like honey. "You've been so quiet. What do you think about Kevin's success?" Everyone looked at him, waiting. This was their game, making him either praise Kevin or look bad by staying silent. Marcus looked at Patricia. "I think success means different things to different people," he said calmly. "How deep," Lisa said with a little laugh. But rent and food require the normal kind of success, don't they? Lisa has a point, David said, leaning forward. Thinking deeply is nice for people who don't have to worry about paying bills. Jennifer held Marcus's hand tighter, but still, she said nothing. Speaking of paying bills, Kevin said, cutting another piece of his steak, how are you two managing money? I mean, with just Jennifer's teacher salary. The question hung in the air like a knife. Jennifer's face turned red. For a moment, Marcus thought she might finally speak up. Instead, she looked down at her plate. Her silence was louder than any words. We manage, Marcus said simply. I'm sure you do, David said, nodding. It's amazing what people can get used to when they have to. Marcus felt angry but stayed calm. He touched the envelope in his pocket. Soon, he thought. Very soon. Marcus excused himself from the table, saying he needed to use the bathroom. Instead, he stepped into the hallway and pulled out his phone. He called a number, and someone answered right away. Wilson Law Office, this is Marcus Thompson. I need to make sure everything is ready for tomorrow morning. Yes, Mr. Thompson. The papers were delivered this afternoon like you asked? 30 days, just like we discussed. Everything is filed properly. You're all set. Marcus ended the call and stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at the family photos on the walls. 15 years of memories that didn't include him. 15 years of this family living in a house they thought they owned. He touched the envelope in his pocket one more time before going back to the dining room. Their laughter had gotten louder while he was gone. Oh, don't worry about it, Patricia said as he sat down. We know how hard it must be to keep track of time when you don't have anywhere you need to be. Kevin chuckled. Mom, be nice. Some people just have more flexible schedules. Flexible? Lisa repeated, not looking up from her phone. That's one way to say it. Marcus reached for his water glass. His hand didn't shake, even though he was angry inside. He had learned a long time ago that reacting to these mean comments only made things worse. Instead, he watched how David's eyes sparkled with amusement, how Patricia's smile got bigger when her children were clever, and how Jennifer focused on her plate and said nothing. I was just telling everyone about my promotion, Kevin said. Senior partner at 32. Not bad for someone who started at the bottom. We're so proud. Patricia beamed. It's wonderful when hard work pays off. She was suggesting that Marcus didn't work hard. Marcus took a sip of wine but didn't taste it. Marcus, David said, leaning back in his chair like a king. How's the job search going? Any good opportunities? He asked it like he cared, but really, he was making fun of Marcus. I'm looking at several opportunities, Marcus said. Looking, Lisa repeated with a small smile. That's such a positive way to describe being unemployed. Lisa, Jennifer finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. What? Lisa said. I'm just saying it's impressive how optimistic he stays. Not everyone could handle being out of work for so long. Kevin nodded like he was wise. It takes a special person to keep their dignity in that situation. I mean, living here in this beautiful house without paying the mortgage or utilities. He let the sentence hang in the air. At least he knows how to pick good real estate, David added with a chuckle. This house has almost doubled in value since I bought it 15 years ago. Marcus felt his hand move toward his jacket pocket, where the envelope rested against his chest like a shield. The papers inside were new and official, with stamps and signatures that would change everything in this room. But not yet. Not until the right moment. You're lucky, son, David continued. Living in a place like this, in a neighborhood like this, without having to worry about the money. Jennifer's family takes care of their own. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Marcus felt Jennifer looking at him, waiting to see what he would do. Instead, he smiled a little and touched the envelope again. Soon, he thought. Very soon. When Marcus came back to the table after his phone call, the family was talking about Lisa's new job. She had just gotten a promotion at her marketing company. She was describing her new office with big windows, excited like someone who never doubted they would succeed. The view is incredible, she was saying, moving her wine glass around as she talked. On clear days, you can see the mountains. Success has its rewards, David said approvingly. When you work hard and make smart choices, good things happen. Patricia nodded, her necklace catching the light. It's so wonderful to see our children doing so well. Both Kevin and Lisa have really made something of themselves. She didn't mention Jennifer, even though she was their daughter too. As a public school teacher, Jennifer didn't make as much money as her brother and sister, and her family had always thought that wasn't good enough. But tonight, Jennifer wasn't even the main target of their disappointment. You know what I love most about this house? David continued, sitting back in his chair like a satisfied king. The stability it represents. We've been here for 15 years, watching the neighborhood grow. Property values have more than doubled. This place is worth almost $2 million now. It's good that Marcus appreciates nice houses, Kevin said with a smirk. Even if he can't afford one himself. Everyone laughed. Marcus took a slow sip of wine, his face not changing. Inside his jacket pocket, the envelope seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. Actually, Patricia said, standing up, I should check on dessert. Marcus, would you mind helping me clear some of these plates? It wasn't really a question. Marcus stood up and started collecting the dinner plates, following Patricia into the kitchen. The kitchen was all shiny granite and stainless steel appliances, the kind you see in fancy magazines. I hope you don't mind us being so direct, Patricia said as she put strawberry shortcake on small plates. We're just concerned about Jennifer's future. I understand your concern, Marcus replied calmly. Do you? Patricia turned to face him, her expression changing from fake politeness to something meaner. Because from where I stand, it looks like you're happy to let my daughter support you forever. She moved closer, pretending to reach for dessert forks, but really trying to intimidate him. What happened next would be remembered differently by everyone who saw it, but the result was clear. Patricia's elbow hit the edge of a serving plate, making it tilt sharply. The perfectly sliced steak, still warm and covered in gravy, slid off the plate and landed right across the front of Marcus's white shirt. Oh my goodness! Patricia exclaimed, putting her hands to her mouth like she was shocked. I'm so clumsy! Marcus, I'm terribly sorry! The kitchen went silent except for the sound of gravy dripping onto the floor. Marcus looked down at the dark stains spreading across his shirt, then back up at Patricia's face. She looked shocked and apologetic and concerned, but her eyes had a hint of satisfaction she couldn't quite hide. Let me get you something to clean that, she said, already moving toward the paper towels like she had practiced this. Marcus took the towels without saying anything, carefully wiping at the stain while Patricia kept apologizing. The sauce had soaked through to his undershirt, and the smell of beef and gravy stuck to him like proof of his humiliation. We should get you a clean shirt, Patricia suggested. David probably has something that would fit. It's fine, Marcus said quietly. He finished cleaning up and threw the dirty towels in the trash. They went back to the dining room, where everyone stopped talking the moment they saw the big wet stain across Marcus's chest. Jennifer's eyes went wide with embarrassment, but her mouth stayed closed. What happened? David asked, though his barely hidden smile suggested he already knew. Just a little accident, Patricia said, sitting back down. I'm afraid I was a bit careless. These things happen, Lisa said with fake sympathy. At least it's just a shirt. Marcus sat down, very aware of how the stain made him look like a little kid who couldn't eat properly. Everyone at the table understood what it meant. He was literally wearing their disrespect. You know, David said, reaching for his wine glass. Speaking of property values, I should probably update my home insurance. This place keeps getting more valuable. He chuckled at his own financial wisdom. It's funny how real estate works. The right location, the right timing, and suddenly you're sitting on a gold mine. Marcus felt a slow smile spread across his face, the first real expression he'd had all evening. The family noticed the change. Their own smiles faltered slightly at something unfamiliar in his expression. Actually, Marcus said, his voice carrying a new note of calm confidence. I'd be very interested to see your property documents. The deed, ownership papers, that sort of thing. The request was so unexpected that for a moment, no one said anything. David's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. I'm sorry, David said. The ownership documents, Marcus repeated, his smile getting bigger. For this house. I'd love to take a look at them. The dining room fell into the kind of silence that comes before something big happens. David set his wine glass down carefully, his eyes studying Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. Kevin and Lisa looked at each other, their earlier confidence flickering like candles in the wind. The ownership documents? David repeated slowly, like the words were in a foreign language. May I ask why? Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed despite the beef stain on his chest. Professional curiosity. In my work, I analyze finances and property investments. This house is such a big asset. I'd just like to see the paperwork. Your work? Lisa said with a nervous laugh. You mean when you had work? But something had changed in the room. The family's earlier boldness suddenly seemed fragile, like ice beginning to crack. Of course, David said, his voice carrying forced cheerfulness. Though I'm not sure why you'd be interested in an old man's paperwork. Humor me, Marcus said simply. David hesitated for a moment longer, then pushed back from the table. Well, if you insist. The documents are in my study. He disappeared down the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the wooden floors. The rest of the family sat in uncomfortable silence, avoiding Marcus's steady gaze. Patricia fidgeted with her pearl necklace. Kevin checked his phone over and over. Only Jennifer looked directly at her husband, confusion and growing alarm clear on her face. Marcus, she said quietly. What's this about? Before he could answer, David returned carrying a leather folder. He set it on the table confidently, like a man who had never questioned his own security. Here we are, David announced, opening the folder with a flourish. Purchased this house in 2009 for $850,000. Best investment I ever made. He spread the papers across the table like he was showing a winning hand in poker. The deed was yellowed with age, the signatures faded but still readable. Various insurance documents and property tax records created an impressive display of ownership. Marcus studied the documents carefully, nodding occasionally as he read. The family watched him with growing unease, unable to understand why their foundation suddenly felt unstable. This is fascinating, Marcus said finally, his fingers tracing the edge of the original deed. David Henderson, purchaser, dated September 15, 2009. That's right, David said, his chest swelling with pride. Bought it from an elderly couple who were moving to a smaller place. They'd lived here for 30 years. And you've been the owner ever since, Marcus confirmed. Absolutely. 15 years of building value, making improvements, turning this into the home you see today. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope that had rested against his heart all evening. The paper was crisp and new, with official stamps that caught the light. He placed it beside David's documents with the same careful attention a doctor might show while performing surgery. That's interesting, Marcus said, opening his envelope. Because according to these documents, David Henderson hasn't owned this property for the past 2 years. The words hit the table like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples of confusion through the family. David leaned forward, his face turning red. What are you talking about? Marcus spread his own papers across the table. The fresh ink and official stamps created a stark contrast to David's old documents. Property deed for 847 Maple Street, Phoenix, Arizona. Transferred to new ownership on April 10, 2022. Kevin grabbed the nearest document, his eyes scanning frantically. This has to be some kind of mistake. No mistake, Marcus said calmly. When the elderly couple you mentioned passed away, their house went to their nephew in Seattle. He didn't want to be a landlord, so he sold the property. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Patricia's face went white beneath her carefully applied makeup. Lisa's phone clattered to the table, forgotten. Sold it to whom? David demanded, though his voice had lost its earlier authority. Marcus pointed to the signature line on the deed, where his name was written in bold, clear letters. Marcus Thompson. Purchase for $1.3 million. Cash. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sounds from outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, and the sound of a family's world falling apart. That's impossible, Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. You've been unemployed for 8 months. I was between contracts, Marcus corrected gently. My last project involved helping a tech startup with their cryptocurrency. When the company went public, my commission was substantial. David stared at the documents like they might transform back into something he could understand if he looked long enough. But the rent payments, you said you own the house. You leased this property, Marcus said, his voice patient like he was explaining something simple. The monthly payments you make go through a property management company. They handle everything. You've been renting from me for 2 years. Kevin's expensive suit suddenly seemed less impressive as he slumped in his chair. You're saying we've been living in your house? For 2 years now, Marcus confirmed. Though I believe our business relationship is about to change. He reached into the envelope one final time and pulled out a single sheet of paper with official letterhead. This notice was delivered to your property management company this afternoon. You have 30 days to move out. The paper landed on the table with the weight of a judge's gavel. Patricia made a small sound like a gasp and a whimper combined. Lisa's successful career suddenly seemed very far away. David's face had gone from red to purple, his hands shaking as he reached for Marcus's documents. This can't be legal, David said. You can't just kick people out of their home. Actually, Marcus said, standing from the table smoothly, I can. The lease agreement includes a clause that lets me end it with 30 days' notice. Your property management company was very clear when they explained the terms. He straightened his stained shirt and smiled at the family who had spent the evening explaining success to him. I believe this concludes our dinner. The chaos that erupted was immediate and total. Kevin jumped up from his chair so fast that it fell backward, clattering against the wooden floor. Patricia pressed her hands to her mouth, staring at the documents like they were written in a language she couldn't read. This is insane, Kevin said, his voice climbing toward panic. You can't just buy someone's house without them knowing. I didn't buy it out from under you, Marcus replied with precision. You were never the owners. You were tenants who apparently forgot that important detail. Lisa grabbed her phone with shaking fingers, probably trying to call someone who might make sense of this nightmare. David remained frozen in his chair, his face going through shades of disbelief and rage. But the mortgage payments, he stammered. I've been making mortgage payments for 15 years. Rent, Marcus corrected. You've been paying rent to the previous owner's estate, which was managed through Henderson Property Services. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me when I discovered it. Jennifer had gone completely still, her eyes fixed on her husband like she was seeing a stranger. How long have you known? 2 years, Marcus said simply. Since the day I bought this house. The admission hit the room like a second earthquake. Patricia finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. 2 years? You've known for 2 years and said nothing? What was I supposed to say? Marcus asked, his tone conversational despite the devastation spreading across their faces. That the family who spent every dinner reminding me of my financial failures was actually living in my house. Kevin started pacing, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. This is crazy. People don't just secretly buy houses. There are laws, procedures. All of which I followed, Marcus assured him. The purchase was handled through an attorney. The property management company kept the existing rental arrangements. Everything was completely legal and proper. Proper? David's voice cracked as he finally stood, his hands pressed against the table. You deceived us. I told you the truth about everything except one detail, Marcus replied. I told you I was a financial analyst. I told you I had been working in cryptocurrency consulting. I told you I understood property values and investments. He gestured toward the scattered documents. You chose not to listen because it didn't fit the story you preferred. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 9 times, its deep tones adding weight to the moment. Outside, the evening had grown dark, and the windows reflected the family's shocked faces back at them. There has to be something we can do, Patricia said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. Some kind of arrangement we can make. An arrangement? Marcus repeated, his eyebrows rising slightly. Like what? We could buy the house from you, Patricia suggested weakly. At market value? Marcus asked. $2 million? Patricia's mouth opened and closed without sound. Kevin stopped pacing, the reality of their situation finally penetrating his panic. We don't have $2 million, Lisa said flatly, her successful career suddenly seeming very small. No, Marcus agreed. You don't. Jennifer finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Why now? Why tell us tonight? Marcus looked at his wife, this woman he had loved enough to marry, who had sat silent through years of her family's casual cruelty. Because 15 minutes ago, your mother deliberately spilled dinner on my shirt while telling me I was a burden on your family. He touched the stain that had already begun to set into the fabric. Because your father has spent 2 years explaining property values to me in my own house. Because your brother and sister have used every family gathering to remind me that I don't belong here. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath the words. Because my wife has never once asked them to stop. Jennifer flinched like he had slapped her. Marcus, please. We can work this out. You don't have to do this. What exactly am I doing? He asked. Exercising my legal rights as a property owner? Ending a lease agreement according to its terms? You're destroying this family, she said, tears finally beginning to fall. No, Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm simply stopping pretending to be something I'm not. For 2 years, I've played the role of the unemployed husband who should be grateful for your family's charity. Tonight, that performance ends. David slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses jump. You manipulative. I bought a house, Marcus said simply. Everything that happened afterward was your choice. He moved toward the doorway, then paused. The 30-day notice starts immediately. I suggest you begin looking for new accommodations. Marcus, wait, Jennifer called, rising from her chair. Please don't leave like this. He turned back to face her, and for a moment, his expression softened. I'm not leaving like anything, Jennifer. I'm going home. The question is whether you're coming with me. The choice hung in the air between them, as real as the documents scattered across the table. Around them, her family watched with desperate hope, waiting to see which way their daughter would turn. But Marcus didn't wait for her answer. He walked out of the dining room, through the foyer with its expensive light fixtures and family portraits, and out the front door of the house he had owned for 2 years. The cool night air felt like freedom against his face. Marcus woke to the sound of his phone buzzing. The morning light came through the blinds of his downtown apartment, a temporary place he'd kept since the separation became inevitable. It was 6:30 in the morning, and he already had 12 missed calls from Jennifer. He turned off the phone and walked to the kitchen, moving through his morning routine with calm. Coffee black. Toast with butter. The newspaper spread across the small dining table. Everything ordered and peaceful, very different from the chaos he'd left behind the night before. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jennifer. Please call me. We need to talk. Marcus deleted the message without responding and opened his laptop. 3 emails waited from Wilson Law Office, confirming that all legal procedures were going smoothly. The eviction notice had been properly served. The property management company had been notified of the ownership change. Everything was documented and filed. At 7:15, there was a knock at his door. Through the peephole, he saw David standing in the hallway. His usually perfect appearance was messy. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his silver hair looked like he'd been running his fingers through it all night. Marcus opened the door but didn't invite him in. "We need to talk," David said, his voice rough from what had probably been hours of arguing with lawyers who told him exactly what Marcus already knew. He had no legal way to fight this. "No," Marcus said simply. "We don't. Look, I know things got heated last night. Maybe we all said things we didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you said," Marcus interrupted. "For 2 years every word was precisely what you intended." David's composure cracked slightly. "What do you want? Money? I can give you money." "I don't want your money, David. I have my own." "Then what?" "Name your price." "There has to be something." "There's nothing you can offer me that I don't already have." "What about Jennifer?" David's voice carried a note of desperation. "You're going to destroy your marriage over pride?" "My marriage was destroyed the moment your daughter chose to watch her family humiliate me rather than speak up." Marcus stepped back toward his door. "This conversation is over." "Wait." David's voice carried panic. "You can't just throw us out. We've lived there for 15 years. That house is our home." "It's my house," Marcus said with finality. "You have 29 days to find a new one." He closed the door, leaving David standing in the hallway. By 9 a.m., Marcus was in his car heading to the offices of Wilson Law Office. The law firm occupied 3 floors of a glass building in downtown Phoenix, with views that rivaled anything Kevin might have bragged about. James Wilson, his attorney, was a small man with sharp eyes and an appreciation for legal precision. He'd handled the original property purchase and had been delighted to help with what he privately called the most elegant eviction notice I've ever filed. "Everything's proceeding exactly as planned," Wilson said, reviewing the files spread across his desk. "The family has no legal standing to contest the eviction. The rental agreement was clear about the terms." "Any complications?" Marcus asked. "None, though I did receive a rather frantic call from a family attorney this morning. Apparently, they're exploring their options." "What options would those be?" Wilson smiled thinly. "There aren't any. The law is quite clear on property rights. You own the house. You have the right to end their lease with proper notice. End of story." Marcus nodded, satisfied. "The timeline?" 29 days remaining. If they're not out by then, we can begin formal eviction proceedings, though I doubt it will come to that." "No," Marcus agreed. "It won't." He left the law office and drove through Phoenix, taking the long route that would lead him past Maple Street. As he got closer to the house, he could see Patricia's car in the driveway next to Jennifer's Honda. The family was gathering, no doubt trying to figure out some kind of response to their new reality. His phone rang as he passed the house. Jennifer's number appeared on the screen. This time, he answered. "Marcus, thank God." "Where are you?" "I'm living my life," he said simply. "Please come back. We're all here, and we want to apologize." "Really? Apologize for what?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. For everything. For the way we treated you. For last night." "Last night was just the end result, Jennifer. It wasn't unusual. We can fix this. My family realizes they were wrong. Your family realizes they're about to be homeless," Marcus corrected. "That's not the same thing as understanding they were wrong." There was a long pause. In the background, he could hear voices, urgent whispered conversations that sounded like damage control rather than genuine regret. "What do you want me to do?" Jennifer asked finally. "I want you to choose," Marcus said. "But not today. And not under pressure from your family. When you make that choice, make it because you know what kind of person you want to be." "I choose you," she said quickly. "I choose us." "You had 2 years to choose us," Marcus replied. "You chose silence instead." He hung up the phone and continued driving, heading toward the financial district where his new contract work awaited. The cryptocurrency consulting firm had offered him a permanent position with a substantial signing bonus. His life was moving forward with or without the people who had spent years convinced he was moving backward. That evening, he returned to his apartment to find a dozen roses outside his door along with a handwritten note from Jennifer. He read it once, then threw both the flowers and the letter into the trash without a second thought. Some decisions, once made, couldn't be reversed. 1 week had passed since the dinner, and the house on Maple Street buzzed with the desperate energy of people running out of time. Moving boxes appeared on the front porch, then disappeared again as the family struggled with decisions they never imagined having to make. Marcus drove past twice that week, observing from a distance as reality set in. Kevin's BMW was there most days now, parked beside a rental truck that symbolized the family's former prosperity crumbling. The corner office with its mountain views couldn't help solve the fundamental problem. They needed a place to live, and their options were suddenly very limited. On Thursday afternoon, his phone rang. This time, it wasn't Jennifer. "This is Kevin," the voice said, stripped of its usual confidence. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Please. Just hear me out." Marcus considered hanging up, then decided he was curious about what the Golden Son might have to say now that his family's world had collapsed. "You have 5 minutes. Look, I know we messed up. All of us. The way we treated you was wrong, and I'm sorry for my part in it." The apology sounded rehearsed, probably written with input from the entire family. Marcus said nothing, letting the silence stretch. "The thing is," Kevin continued, his voice becoming more strained, "we're family. Jennifer is your wife. Surely that counts for something." "Family?" Marcus repeated. "Is that what you call what happened at that dinner table? We made mistakes. People make mistakes. For 2 years? That's not a mistake, Kevin. That's a pattern." Kevin's breathing was audible through the phone. "What if we could make it right? Really make it right? How do you propose to do that?" We could acknowledge what happened publicly. Apologize to you in front of people. Show everyone that we were wrong about you." Marcus almost laughed. Even in their desperation, they were thinking about appearances, about managing their public image rather than understanding the deeper issues. "You think this is about my reputation? Don't you want people to know that you're successful? That you were right and we were wrong?" "Kevin," Marcus said quietly, "the people who matter already know who I am. I don't need your validation." "Then what do you need?" "Nothing you can provide." The line went quiet for a long moment. When Kevin spoke again, his voice was smaller, more desperate. "My parents don't have anywhere to go. Mom's been crying for 3 days straight. Dad keeps calling real estate agents, but everything in their price range is either too small or in neighborhoods they don't know. That sounds like a problem they should have considered before treating me like hired help in my own house. Marcus, please. I'm begging you." The word begging hung in the air. Kevin Henderson, who had spent years explaining success to others, was now pleading for mercy from the man he'd dismissed as a failure. "Begging?" Marcus repeated. "That's interesting. When did you realize you were in a position where begging was your best option?" "When I understood that you hold all the power." "I've always held all the power, Kevin. You just chose not to see it." Friday brought another visitor to his apartment. This time it was Lisa, looking smaller somehow without her usual armor of professional confidence. "I brought coffee," she said, holding up 2 cups from the expensive shop near her office. "The kind you used to order when we'd see each other downtown." Marcus accepted the coffee but didn't invite her in. They stood in his doorway, the hallway quiet around them. "I've been thinking about something you said," Lisa began. "About respect not being something you can ask for after it's gone. And I think I understand now. We didn't just disrespect you. We made it impossible for you to respect us." This was more insightful than he'd expected from her. Marcus waited for her to continue. "The thing is, I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if it can be fixed." "It can't," Marcus said simply. Lisa nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Will you at least consider giving us more time? Not for me, but for Mom and Dad. They're older. This is harder for them." They had 2 years to consider how their actions might affect their future. They didn't know. They didn't know I owned the house. They knew exactly what kind of people they were choosing to be. Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smudging her carefully applied makeup. I used to think success meant having the corner office and the nice car. But you've taught me something else about it. What's that? Success means being able to walk away from people who don't value you. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's terrible, and it's going to hurt my family badly, but it's right. Saturday morning brought the final visitor. Jennifer stood outside his door holding a suitcase, her eyes red from crying, but her posture determined. I've made my choice, she said. Marcus looked at the suitcase, then at his wife's face. Have you? I told them I was leaving. That I was choosing my husband over my family. And what did they say? They said I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Marcus considered her words, noting what she hadn't said. But you still want me to cancel the eviction? Jennifer's face crumpled. They're my parents, Marcus. I can't just watch them become homeless. You watched them humiliate your husband for 2 years. That's different. No, Marcus said gently. It's exactly the same. You're asking me to sacrifice my dignity to spare your family's comfort. Again. He took the suitcase from her hands and set it down in the hallway. When you're ready to choose me without conditions, without asking me to pretend the past 2 years didn't happen, call me. Marcus. 22 days, Jennifer. That's how much time they have left. He closed the door, leaving his wife standing in the hallway with her suitcase and her impossible choice. 3 months after the eviction deadline had passed, Marcus sat in his new office overlooking the Phoenix skyline. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that stretched across the entire valley, where the city's neighborhoods spread out like a patchwork quilt in the afternoon sun. His phone buzzed with a text from his real estate agent. New tenants moved into Maple Street property today. Clean background check. Excellent references. First month's rent deposited. Marcus set the phone aside and returned to his work. The house had sat empty for 6 weeks after the Henderson family moved out, giving him time to have it professionally cleaned and updated. New floors throughout, fresh paint in every room, modern appliances in the kitchen where Patricia had once staged her humiliation. The new tenants were a young couple with 2 children, both teachers at the local elementary school. They'd signed a 2-year lease and seemed genuinely excited about living in such a beautiful neighborhood. Their references described them as quiet, responsible people who took care of their homes and treated others with respect. A knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant peered in with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a woman downstairs asking to see you. She says she's your wife, but she's not on your approved visitor list. Marcus considered this for a moment. 3 months without contact. No calls, no texts, no flowers left outside his apartment. He'd wondered if Jennifer had finally accepted that some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Send her up. Jennifer appeared in his doorway 5 minutes later, looking different than he remembered. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a worn leather purse. Her wedding ring was notably absent from her left hand. Hello, Marcus. Jennifer. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please sit. She settled into the chair and looked around the office, taking in the expensive furniture and impressive view. You've done well for yourself. I was always doing well for myself. Your family just chose not to see it. A moment of silence passed between them. Outside, clouds were beginning to gather over the mountains, promising rain. I filed for divorce last week, Jennifer said finally. Marcus nodded. I received the papers yesterday. I wanted to tell you in person. To explain. There's nothing to explain. We both knew this was inevitable. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I kept thinking I could fix it somehow. That if I tried hard enough, I could make everyone happy. You can't make everyone happy, Jennifer. Sometimes you have to choose. I know that now. She looked down at her hands folded in her lap. I chose wrong. For 2 years, I chose wrong every single time. Marcus waited, saying nothing. My family found a rental house in Mesa, she continued. It's smaller than what they're used to, but Dad's adjusting. Mom joined a book club. They're learning to live differently. And you? I moved out 6 weeks ago. Got an apartment near the school where I teach. She managed a small smile. It's tiny, but it's mine. For the first time in my life, I'm living somewhere that's completely mine. How does that feel? Terrifying. Liberating. Lonely. She paused. Right. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying his wife's face. The woman sitting across from him looked older than she had 3 months ago, but also more solid somehow, more defined. I don't expect forgiveness, Jennifer said. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not just you, but the person I could have been if I'd found my voice sooner. What will you do now? Keep teaching. Keep learning to live on my own. Maybe take some classes. Travel a little. She shrugged. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to keep everyone else happy. Marcus nodded approvingly. That sounds like a good plan. What about you? Are you seeing anyone? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with everything they'd lost and everything they could never reclaim. I've had dinner with someone a few times, Marcus said carefully. Another financial analyst. She's intelligent, kind. She speaks her mind. Jennifer smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. I'm glad. You deserve someone who appreciates what she has. Yes, Marcus said simply. I do. Jennifer stood to leave, then paused. I have something for you. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped package. I found this when I was packing up my things. I thought you should have it. Marcus unwrapped the package to find a photo from their wedding day. In it, they were both laughing at something off camera, their faces bright with joy and possibility. He'd forgotten this picture existed. We were happy then, Jennifer said softly. We were, Marcus agreed. For a while. Thank you, she said. For showing me what self-respect looks like, even if it cost us everything. After she left, Marcus sat alone in his office as the clouds continued to gather, eventually obscuring the view entirely. He placed the wedding photo in his desk drawer, not to be forgotten, but not to be displayed either. Some chapters of life ended cleanly, with lessons learned and dignity intact. His computer chimed with an email notification. The cryptocurrency startup wanted to discuss a permanent partnership, potentially worth several $1 million. His calendar showed 3 client meetings next week, all with companies eager for his expertise. Marcus Thompson had always been successful. Now, finally, he was successful on his own terms, surrounded by people who valued what he brought to their lives. The difference, he reflected, was everything. As the storm clouds thickened outside his windows, Marcus returned to his work, planning a future that belonged entirely to him, a future built not on the approval of others, but on the solid foundation of self-respect, clear boundaries, and the unwavering knowledge of his own worth. He had walked away from people who couldn't see his value, and in doing so, had found something far more precious, peace.